Hey everyone, welcome back to Steve's View. Today we're diving into a story that has the potential to reshape one of the most controversial and painful issues in American life: the cost of prescription drugs. If you've ever walked into a pharmacy, looked at the price tag for your medication, and thought to yourself, why the hell is it so expensive in the richest country on earth? You're not alone. Americans have been asking this for decades. And now, President Trump has thrown down a gauntlet. Starting October 1st, his administration will impose a 100% tariff on all imported brand-name prescription drugs. Yes, you heard that right. Double the price unless the drug is made here in the United States. And over time, those tariffs could climb to 150% and even 250%. The message is clear. If pharmaceutical companies want access to the U.S. market, they need to manufacture inside America's borders. Trump calls this an act of fairness, a blow against Big Pharma greed, and even a national security necessity. But is this a masterstroke of political timing, or could it backfire and make life even harder for patients in the short run? That's what we're unpacking today. Let's start with the problem. Prescription drugs in the U.S. are notoriously expensive. Study after study shows that Americans pay 2 to 3 times more than people in Canada, Europe, or even Australia for the exact same pill made by the exact same company. Take insulin, for example. It costs around $35 a vial in Canada. In the United States, it can easily run over $300. Families drive across the border every month just to buy insulin at a fraction of the cost. And tragically, every year we hear stories of Americans rationing insulin, cutting doses to make it last, sometimes with deadly consequences. Why is that? The answer is a mix of factors: patent law, limited competition, the power of pharmaceutical lobbyists, and a health system that allows companies to set their own prices with almost no negotiation. In many other countries, governments bargain directly with drug companies and set price caps. But in the U.S., Big Pharma has long fought against that, arguing that high prices are necessary to fund innovation and new drug development. Critics, of course, say that's a cover story, that pharmaceutical firms spend more on marketing than on research, and that American patients are being treated like cash cows to subsidize cheaper prices in the rest of the world. This has created enormous frustration. Poll after poll shows that lowering prescription drug costs is one of the top priorities for American voters, cutting across party lines. It's not a Republican issue or a Democratic issue. It's a survival issue. So what exactly is Trump proposing? The new policy, effective October 1st, slaps a 100% tariff on all imported brand-name prescription drugs. That means if a drug is manufactured overseas and brought into the U.S., the importer has to pay double its value in tax. And this isn't a one-time move. Trump's administration says the tariff will increase over time: 100% at the start, 150% within about a year, and as high as 250% within 2 to 3 years. But there's an escape clause. If a pharmaceutical company builds manufacturing facilities in the United States, their drugs are exempt from the tariff. In other words, move your production here, employ American workers, and sell without penalty. It's a carrot and stick approach. The stick is massive tariffs. The carrot is tariff-free access to the biggest pharmaceutical market in the world. This fits into Trump's broader trade philosophy. He's used tariffs on steel, aluminum, cars, solar panels, and a host of other goods to pressure companies into reshoring production. Now, he's applying the same playbook to Big Pharma. So how have drug companies reacted? Interestingly, a number of them have already signaled they'll build or expand facilities in the U.S. Companies like Novo Nordisk, GlaxoSmithKline, and Roche have all announced multi-billion-dollar projects in states like North Carolina, Texas, and New Jersey. Even American firms that have long outsourced production to places like Ireland and India are suddenly pledging to bring some operations back home. Why? Because the math is brutal. Paying a 100% or 150% tariff would price their products out of the market. They'd rather absorb the cost of building a plant in America than lose access to a $600 billion pharmaceutical market. This is exactly what Trump wants, a reshoring wave in one of the most critical industries for public health. Here's where it gets tricky. In the short term, there's no escaping it. Tariffs are likely to make drugs more expensive. If a company is hit with a 100% import tax, they're going to pass at least some of that cost on to consumers. For patients who rely on brand-name medications with no generic alternatives, this could be painful. Imagine you're paying $200 for a prescription today. After October 1st, that could become $400 or even more, depending on how quickly the tariffs take effect and how companies respond. This is the nightmare scenario critics warn about. They argue that Trump is gambling with people's lives and that the poor, the elderly, and the chronically ill will bear the brunt of the pain. But Trump's team argues the opposite. They say the short-term pain is worth it for long-term gain. If drug companies are forced to move production here, over time, the supply chain becomes more stable, competition increases, and prices actually fall. It's a bold bet. Endure short-term turbulence for the promise of long-term relief. One of the most interesting parts of Trump's argument isn't just about price, it's about security. In 2023, the U.S. imported $213 billion worth of pharmaceuticals, double the amount from a decade earlier. The single biggest source, Ireland, thanks to favorable tax policies. Other major suppliers include Germany, Switzerland, and India. Trump's argument is simple. What happens in a pandemic or a war if those supply chains get cut off? America could find itself unable to provide critical medications to its own citizens. The COVID-19 pandemic offered a glimpse of this danger. Early on, the U.S. struggled to obtain basic medical supplies like masks and ventilators because production was concentrated overseas. Trump insists that the same cannot be allowed to happen with life-saving drugs. In his words, no American should have to worry about running out of medicine because a foreign government decides to shut the door. For many voters, this framing resonates. It turns drug prices from a consumer issue into a matter of national survival. Now let's be honest, this plan faces enormous hurdles. First, Big Pharma isn't going to roll over quietly. The pharmaceutical lobby is one of the most powerful in Washington, spending hundreds of millions of dollars every year on lobbying and campaign contributions. They will fight this in the courts, in Congress, and in the media. Second, there's the question of whether tariffs alone can really fix the problem. Building new factories in the U.S. takes years, not months. In the meantime, Americans could face skyrocketing prices and potential shortages. Third, history shows that tariffs often create unintended consequences. Even if drug companies move some operations back to the U.S., will they really pass savings on to consumers? Or will they continue to price gouge, just from a different location? And let's not forget the legal dimension. Past attempts to regulate drug prices have been tied up in court battles for years. Expect Big Pharma to unleash an army of lawyers against Trump's plan. It's worth putting Trump's move in context. He's not the first president to try to tackle drug prices. Barack Obama's Affordable Care Act included measures to close the Medicare donut hole and expand access to generics. Joe Biden's Inflation Reduction Act gave Medicare the power to negotiate prices on a limited number of drugs for the first time in history. But these efforts have been modest compared to the scale of the problem. Drug prices continue to rise, and pharmaceutical profits remain enormous. Trump's approach is radically different. Instead of tinkering with regulations, he's swinging a sledgehammer. Tariffs so massive, they force a structural change in the industry. Some call it reckless, others call it genius. Either way, it's unprecedented. From a political standpoint, this is also a shrewd move. Polls consistently show that high drug prices are one of the top concerns for American voters. By positioning himself as the president willing to take on Big Pharma, Trump taps into widespread anger. He also forces Democrats into a corner. If they oppose the tariffs, they risk looking like they're siding with drug companies over patients. If they support the tariffs, they hand Trump a political victory. It's a win-win narrative for him, at least in the short term. Here's where we circle back to the opening question. Is Trump's tariff policy truly a masterstroke of political timing? On the one hand, yes, it directly targets an issue that affects millions of Americans every day. It forces pharmaceutical companies to rethink their entire business model. It reframes drug prices as a matter of national security. And it gives Trump a populist narrative. He's the guy standing up to Big Pharma when no one else would. On the other hand, it carries serious risks. In the short term, drug prices could skyrocket. Vulnerable patients could suffer. The legal and political battles could drag on for years. And there's no guarantee that even if companies build factories in the US, prices will actually come down. In other words, bold, but dangerous. So where does that leave us? The truth is, no one really knows how this will play out. Trump's plan could mark the beginning of a new era, one where America produces its own medicine, drug prices finally come down, and Big Pharma loses its stranglehold. Or it could become a cautionary tale of unintended consequences, with patients caught in the crossfire of a political gamble. What we do know is this. For the first time in a long time, Americans are having a real conversation about why they pay the highest drug prices in the world, and whether that system is sustainable. So let me throw it back to you. Do you think Trump's tough tariff strategy will finally force Big Pharma to play fair with American patients, or will the costs just hit regular people in the short run? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if you found it helpful. And as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.